Hello, Kobo and Conversation listeners. This is Nathan Maharaj, and I'm here with Michael Tamblyn.
Hello.
And we're back with another installment in our book talking series, where we talk about stuff going on in the business of books. To get us going, Michael, I understand there's a lot going on in books right now with AI that you are very eager to talk about. But let's start with something's going on with NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and AI. What's that about?
It's two different themes that I'm finding really interesting. One is different parts of the book industry just colliding with AI and like shrapnel and flames and all kinds of stuff comes out of it whenever that happens. And the second is this thing that seems to be going on right now of like writing and author organizations spontaneously combusting. Yeah, we've had like Romance Writers of America has had this like huge, governance blow up that's been going on with, boards quitting and being recombined and all of that's happening. And now we're seeing kind of a similar thing happening with NaNoWriMo. And for those of you that don't know, NaNoWriMo is this like fantastic kind of organization slash writing challenge where everybody gets together and you go on the website and you sign up and your goal is to write a book in a month.
And that month
And
is November.
and that month is November. And we have people in the office that do it. And it's, if you've never written a book before, you've kind of got all of this like kind of group energy around you to help you power through it. And how many words can you write in a day? And so it's like it's a lot of fun. And for a lot of people, it's like their first books have been written through NaNoWriMo. Um, and so that's been going on for years. That's been kind of generally seen as a great organization. And then what is it, like a month ago,
Mhm.
a couple of months ago,
It was late September.
that's right. They came out with a statement that was essentially in in support of writing assisted by AI and leaning into this conversation about whether should you be writing books generally with AI assistance? Should you be writing should you be using AI at all in the
Mhm.
in the course of a creative process? Is a book really a book if you've had AI in it? And they came out like not just kind of softly but hard, saying yes. And this is essentially like AI is like an assistive technology, and it's something that allows greater accessibility for writing for more people. And kind of like if you don't like that, maybe you are classist or you are denying people access to the ability to write.
Yeah, they came
So
out
it was
and they
yeah.
explicitly said that opposition to this technology ignores classist and ableist issues, which is, I mean, that's not just supporting it, but that's telling the opposition that they are bad.
Yeah, those are fighting words, and doesn't really, unfortunately, leave any wiggle room. Like you've staked out your positions at that point, and so that right now is just tearing NaNoWriMo apart,
Hmm.
and so we're all sort of, I think, sitting on the sidelines right now, trying to see what's going to happen next. And will they back away from this? Will they create some kind of room within it,
Hmm.
or have they really dug in? And I think the question that you wonder if you're looking at the organization is, are we talking about, you know, a board that has, or like a steering committee or an advisory committee that has a very specific stance on this? Is it like a one person on that board who's
Hmm.
really loud? Like, we're just sort of waiting to see what happens. But it's it's another example of you know, organization you're related to writing hits AI and
Hmm.
then spontaneously kind of fragments itself.
And as it stands now, they haven't, it wouldn't, to say they walked it back would be probably inaccurate, but they have said and I'm quoting here from a post on the NaNoWriMo organization's own site. They say, "We made mistakes in our initial expression of this position. We speak to those mistakes
Mistakes
in
were
a
made.
letter to our community. We've simplified the language on this page, which is where you'll find their initial statement now revised. So we can't find them going quite so hard in the paint for AI. They simplified the language on this page to reflect their core position. So, um, you know, point counterpoint, and now we're in this like still pro but softened position. It is a fascinating uh, bit of development in this in what was really a nice vibes kind of time in
Yeah,
the
like
last bit of the year.
the kind of this like the sweetest organization ever in a lot of ways. Like we're gonna be together, we're all gonna get together, we're all gonna write a book. It's gonna be great. Except you and your and your desire to keep the robots out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is not the end of our AI discussion, though. There's other
No.
stuff going on. Apparently, AI narration in audiobooks, a hot topic, is formerly verboten. Now there are places that are kind of warming up to maybe we should have some robots read some books. What's going on with Audible and AI?
This news probably hit beginning of September. Audible is starting to generate replicas of different audiobook narrators. And it's as far as we can tell, it's kind of like an invitation to various narrators to help kind of train the artificial intelligence that Amazon could then use to to create AI powered narrators. So you wouldn't have to have somebody in a studio all the time. You can kind of, you could upload your book and the AI would do it for you. And the and this is kind of a progression from where we've had AI narration up until now, where it's often been generic voices, or it's you can get the English accent voice, or
Mm,
you can get you can get the Southern accent voice, but what we know from our work in audiobooks is that narration matters a lot,
yeah.
and people have strong feelings about who the narrators are. They have narrators that they like a lot. They have narrators that they kind of follow from book to book. Like
Almost like they're like authors.
oh yeah, yeah. Like I have narrators that will push a book to sort of the top of my stack if I know that they're reading it because they're just they're really good, and yet at the same time, audio is expensive, and putting somebody in a studio for hours and hours at a time and getting them to read a book and do multiple takes and do all the editing and everything else
Yep.
is expensive. And you have lots of books that don't get done because you don't have, either the publisher or the author can't support that. So, um, so this is, I think, being pitched as, hey, we can make this whole thing easier and cheaper.
Hmm.
It Where the angst shows up is um there's the question of like once you as the narrator have kind of handed over your your voice to Audible, what happens to that and how much control of that do you have going forward? Um and uh and they at least what the press releases are saying is that they're going to be compensated for any audiobook that's created using the replica of their voice, but we don't know what that looks like or whether that's going to change or how much that could change over time. So it's both it's an interesting thing because it could really lower the barrier to entry. It's
Hmm.
a challenging thing if you're an AI narrator because what if you don't put your voice in, but other people do put their voices in, and you just start getting bypassed because there's like the cheap robot version of of somebody else's voice that someone could be using instead. So that feels like one of those areas that's about to come under pressure. And then there's the thing that we and lots of other people worry about, which is chances are if you're using an Audible voice, that's going to mean that your audiobook is going to end up locked inside Audible and isn't going to be able to go anywhere else. And and so there's like a platform lock-in problem that
Right.
comes in there as well.
One of the dangerous things about platform lock-in that would seem to bear, especially in this case, is as you spoke about, some books just can't make the case financially for putting someone in a studio. Um, I imagine that would be a lot of older books, the backlist, the stuff
Yeah.
that's the marketing budget has been spent. The book now sits in the publisher's catalog. There is no call for investing a few $1,000s to make it in a new format. But if we could do it for like 100 and like one day's work, that starts to get attractive. And the idea of all those books not yet available in audio suddenly being available is great, but available where and to whom?
And and that is the opportunity that sits behind AI narration in general is um, you have look at the self-published author landscape alone. It's going to cost you, at least a few $1,000s to get a professional narrator to do your book. And if you don't have that, then that book probably doesn't get released in audiobook format. And so the idea of being able to drop that production cost is a big unlock just in terms of the number of titles that would be available out there. Um, if you're a narrator, though, you're kind of looking at the commodification of what was a profession,
Yeah.
and there's no easy way to say, um, once that really gets started, I'm going to hold back that tide. It would really suggest that, you are so good as a narrator that someone will pay, 10x or 100x for your voice versus another voice that they could get off the shelf. And I think that's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
Um, and so Audible's doing it. We know there's some other startups out there that are working on this as well. And we certainly have self-published authors out there going, hey, like are there tools I can use? Are there good tools I can have?
So Audible's positioning this though as a an additional revenue stream for tired and busy narrators so that they can make their own robot version of themselves to go narrate all the books that they can stand that anybody wants to use them for.
Yeah.
Is that how do you see that working out in the longer term?
Yeah, this won't hurt a bit. We're just gonna put you into this photocopier. It's gonna be fine. So the way it's being pitched, at least like so far, is you allow your voice to be used in training the model. And just to be clear, like training the model doesn't mean you as the narrator are doing anything. It means that they're going to take all of the books that you've done before, probably,
Hmm.
and feed them into an LLM or as kind of a training data set to be able to synthesize the qualities of your voice. And the apparently the narrator is supposed to be able to approve their AI voice on a work by work basis. And they're going to be given tools so that they can like kind of change and edit this and they get permission over whether the voice gets used. The so I I guess what I see is that kind of feels like a first step to, then there could be the version where it's like, well, your voice is just available all the time, and
Hmm.
we've got a different exclusive tier for that like gives you different things. Like I think where you're going is that there's just kind of this pressure on things that can be replicated and synthesized. And then you are in competition, not just with those people that are professional narrators, but those people that have allowed their voices to be used for kind of to synthesize a narrator. And that's going to just keep putting pressure on both what narrators get paid and the cost of it, which is, should be really scary if you're a narrator, but also potentially really good if you're an author who just wants to try and get a book out as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And and then there's a secondary benefit, which there are lots and lots of books right now that are just seen as being too expensive to create in audio. Like,
Hmm.
most nonfiction doesn't get made into an audiobook, like
Yep.
aside from really popular stuff. So like the big biographies and things like that all get done, but that 800-page doorstop on on Carthage, or the
Yeah.
the giant book about the Roman Empire,
Yeah.
isn't going to
Academic
get done.
presses are left out
Yeah,
completely
yeah,
in the cold of audio.
doesn't get done. And because like locking somebody in a room to do that is just going to be too expensive. So it does open up a selection thing. I think we all just want to make sure that this stuff doesn't end up behind one ecosystem's kind of walled garden, because they're the ones with the synthesized voices. So we're really all hoping that there are going to be a bunch of startups that are doing this, so that as those tools become available, they're not just available in one place. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I'm crossing fingers about well, I mean, I guess we won't be surprised if it suddenly turns out that Audible has much higher quality, free to use AI voices following maybe a year of a bunch of very skilled narrators allowing robots to develop
Yeah.
models based on their voices.
That ends up being the average of like all of the other good voices that
Yeah,
they've
we
had.
haven't cracked open the T's and C's. So if anybody wants to reach out and let us know, like, nope, there it is right there.
Yeah,
That's the plan. Let us know. Or if they
yeah,
say no, or if there's pushback, this is definitely not done.
yeah. We love a little contract cut and paste.
Yeah.
Send it our way.
Okay. The robots are not done causing havoc. What's going on with Barnes and Noble? Are they having some trouble gatekeeping against nefarious AI content?
So this is when I read that that Barnes and Noble was having a yeah, they were having kind of an erotica problem that was also a low quality content problem that was also an AI problem. My heart went out to them, because anybody who's been in this space, and anybody who runs a service that brings in that just kind of lets people submit books, has crashed into this at one time or another, which is, you want to have independent authors out there who are writing their books and submitting their books, and you can sell them, and like that's great for everybody. And then somebody decides to put in stuff that you don't think you should sell, or
Mm.
you don't think that consumers are going to like, or is going to be bad for your brand, is going to be illegal, and then you have to figure out how to get it out. And the first the first bit of news that I heard about Barnes and Noble going through this is authors being mad online. And that's usually how this stuff starts, is you're trying to take things out of a catalog because you've looked inside it and gone, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I don't think I want to sell. And and then as you start taking it out, you have authors saying, oh, my book's
The
been taken
authors
out.
of said
Yeah,
stuff
yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
love being judged that way.
Do not love being judged that way. And we went through a version of this in 2013, and it was horrible. Um,
Almost to the day, actually. We're
I
close,
know
right?
it's like Thanksgiving 2013. We found out that we had bad stuff in our catalog, and it's what you end up doing is playing like the worst kind of whack-a-mole you can possibly play. And it's one of those games that you can't win. You can only maybe sort of not lose,
Hmm.
because you've got millions of titles in the catalog. And when you start, all that you know is that there are a certain number of them that have content that's against your terms and conditions. Like, it could be sexual content that you're not prepared to sell. It could be suggestive words. It could be hate speech. It could be all kinds of stuff. And then but that's kind of in with a whole bunch of other content that you're totally happy to sell, because you're probably fine with some sexual content. You're fine with erotica, or you're fine with books that interrogate and talk about issues related to historical fascism but doesn't support it itself. Like,
Hmm.
so all of those are mixed in together, and they're probably not well labeled, and they're probably not well categorized, but they're all in there together. And some of them could be kind of put in by nefarious actors that are trying to like sneak it into your catalog. Some of them could just be inexperienced authors who like are kind of dropping stuff in innocently. And And then you've got to figure out which ones to take out and which ones to keep in. And and the challenge in all of it is that like you could just say we're removing all of them, but that could be taking like a million titles out of your
Yeah.
out of your database. And if you do that, you really like hurt the business because you've also taken out a whole lot of books that people want. And if
Yeah.
you don't remove any, then you're exposing yourself to just risk over time and unhappy customers um and if you say, okay, then we're going to take all of the erotica out, that's still a lot of stuff that people like and a lot of stuff that would be there legitimately. And it kind of feels sensory, and
Yeah.
it's probably like that's not a good vibe if you're a bookseller.
Yeah.
Um, but
That's
there,
a debate that like even, experienced justices
yeah,
in
yeah,
courts supreme in more than one state, that these are gnarly topics. They are no
yeah,
place for like folks who actually have other stuff to do with their day and just
totally.
running a bookstore.
Yeah. And if you remove any titles, some people will see this as a speech issue or will see
Yep.
you as being a censor. And And if you remove all of them, then you kind of are being a censor, or at least you're being a very curated bookseller. Um, and and you've got brand risk because there could be things in there that really are problematic that even by the most, liberal definition you don't want to have. I think
Mhm.
almost everyone except the most, kind of free expression absolutist goes, you know what, we're not going to do Holocaust denial. We're not going to do like violent sexual, erotica, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
And and the challenge is trying to find that because keyword searches don't do it alone. And,
Yep.
even, the algorithms that you built make it difficult. And every book that you remove creates an angry author.
Yep.
And every author can go to social media and broadcast their displeasure. You've got journalists on the outside who start to cover this story, and they're looking to both find the worst book that's still in your catalog and the angriest author that's sitting outside of it.
Yep.
Um, and and all of your successes are invisible and all of your failures are
Yeah.
visible. So
Because
yeah,
you're either a censor or you're a cesspool, and
yeah.
that's kind of
And
it.
and as a and this is the free speech debate around this is a part of the larger free speech debate that we're having generally, which is you have people who just believe like I should be able to like put whatever I want on any platform I want and nobody should be able to take it down. And then the reality that like these are businesses. Like
Yeah.
this isn't the public square. In this case, this is Barnes and Noble. In 2013, it was us. Amazon's gone through the same thing. Like we've all been through it because we're all trying to figure out how permeable we want that membrane to be of how much do we let in and how much do we sell. And on one hand, how big is the market and the demand for this? And on the other hand, what kind of retailer do we want to be? What kind of bookstore do we want to be? And so you've got, the situation right now that Barnes and Noble's going through where, they're working with some of the aggregators who bring all of their independent published stuff together. Draft to Digital is probably the
Yep.
biggest one. And they've always been in some ways, especially because they acquired another aggregator called Smashwords, who had a really, kind of a doors open policy on what they would sell. Um, they're having to work together to figure out what are we going to let in and what are we going to let out. And then on top of that, just
You're
as
about to tell me whether is AI making this worse or is this a tool to
oh
make it better?
yeah, no,
Oh,
because
okay.
how could what could possibly be could kind of make this more complicated is that you've got now authors of various kinds starting to generate content with AI. And and it's not like, maybe some of that's sexual material or some of that is, kind of problematic material in some way, but a lot of it's just bad.
Mhm.
And and so you've got B&N's latest moves kind of being also about trying to filter out more of this low quality stuff that's coming in.
And low quality is what you mean by bad. This is like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
all
yeah,
know the
yeah, yeah,
garbage. Like
yeah.
this is the thing Google's been fighting all year long of trying to
Yes.
make those like useless websites that seem to be able to climb search rank but serve no human purpose. This is kind of
Yeah.
that in book form.
And so this gets to I'm kind of I'm cooking a new theory right now
Mm.
of like kind of AI book selling collision. Um, and and it's looking at a couple of scenarios that I think all of us as like ebook retailers or people in this space, publishers, self-published authors and aggregators, we're all going to collide into. And we at Kobo are already seeing it. Like we're seeing these books starting to show up, which are, if they are touched by a human, it's very, very lightly. Um, and so it seems like we've got a bunch of different scenarios that are starting to bubble up. There's one that I would call the AI avalanche, which
Mm.
is, AI just creates a flood of, you know, kind of low quality text content.
Yep.
And especially because, AI has been trained on so much text, it kind of checks
Yep.
as like its first language, like books and written material are the first thing that get hit by this. And the likelihood of that happening, of there just being a river of stuff coming at everybody in this space of books that are kind of like cooked by machines that are not
Yep.
very good at 10 out of 10, 100%
Yep.
likelihood. And we're
Yep.
already in it. It's only going to get worse. And it's like purely machine generated or it's like lightly assisted. It's like there you get a lot of pseudo plagiarization, like take this book but rewrite it with different names, or
Yep.
it's like a lot of what Barnes and Noble was struggling with was summarized content. We get a ton of that. Take a book,
Yeah.
push it
What
in
are the
through
major points of Malcolm
yeah,
Gladwell's
here's a
brand new Tipping Point
yeah,
sequel?
here's
And you
a
can have that out
10
the same
yeah,
day he publishes.
here's a 10-page summary
Yeah.
on this new book. And we saw Amazon and Overdrive, the library distributor, and Barnes and Noble, and now us starting to kick out more of this summarized material because you get one book that's the book you want, and you get like 20 summaries after it made by different people who have all kind of whacked this thing together. But it's going to hit the self-published and the small press and the indie world the hardest
Mm.
because those are the authors and the content creators that are already fighting for attention. If you've got a best-selling book, the best-selling book's going to get to the top of the charts. Like you're not worried about you're annoyed by the trail of other stuff that's
Yeah.
kind of tacked on behind it, but it's not going to cost you. But if you are trying to claw your way to audience attention and you find yourself essentially drowning in a bunch of junk that's sort of around you, like all of that low organic discovery stuff gets buried.
Yeah.
And
It seems
yeah,
like the problem we had in the web, like 30 years ago, that was like keyword stuffing of like,
yeah,
what are popular keywords? I will make content for those popular keywords. And then it came back in the beginning of the ebook era where there was all these blog posts about make a fortune in ebooks. All you got to do is write this book but you actually had to write it. That it was like, write a book about how to be a great manager, how to succeed, how to be financially independent.
yeah.
And it was all like, just make it up and just write the ebook. Those were awful books. That was awful advice. And now they can do it with no effort.
It had to
Uh,
be done by people at least, and
it at
now it
least
does
had to
not
be
have
done
to
by
be done by
people,
people.
which also then, as you're saying now, it drowns out the good actors because the bad actors have zero effort and the good actors are burdened with having to actually write and think and research and provide value, which is much more difficult than pressing a button and telling a robot to go plagiarize at scale.
And and what we don't want is to create, I don't know what you'd call it, like a shoveling problem where it's too much effort to find something good.
Yeah.
The upside for us as booksellers is that becomes a curation problem, and that's kind of what we're here for. So it's like, how good can we be at surfacing the things that are good and filtering out the things that you probably don't want? Um, but we already know that we're going to get buried. And so the work is underway on how do we dig ourselves out of it and how do we filter things and how do we figure out like kind of what's better and what's not. And and because we've got to like, earn a reader's trust on an ongoing basis that we're going to sell them a good thing, it's a big deal for us and for anybody else who's selling in this space. So you've got that AI avalanche problem. That's number one, 100% happening. And then we have what I would call like AI as crappy literary Photoshop. And that one, that one also 100% chance of happening. And just to give you, like, cast your mind back to when Photoshop first came out on the market, and every image had like a drop shadow behind it and a Gaussian blur or like had neon effects on it. Um,
Yeah, there were all
and
those buttons that were like, "This is better than Microsoft Paint." Like that was the first thing. It was
yeah,
it was quote unquote nice looking,
yeah,
by which
I
we mean
can.
did not look nice at all. It just looks slick.
And I can apply a filter to it and it'll look pointillist or
Yeah, yeah,
it'll look like an impressionist painting, except really not, and it's your cat. And so we will certainly see and are already starting to see like AI become the Photoshop of literature.
yeah,
And so the same way that somebody would say, take this, photo and make it look like a Monet, we're gonna have a bunch of like take this and make it sound like Raymond Carver, or take
yeah,
this and do it in the style of Doris Kearns Goodwin, like,
yeah,
and because all of these models, although of course they said that they didn't do it or didn't try to do it or they didn't mean to do it, and now all the lawsuits are going on about it, all have copywritten material in it, like all
hmm
have the books from most of the publishers in there. That stuff is all like cooking around inside. And so for sure we will start to get some of that stylistic stuff going on. And you see that in a little way if you're using Copilot or something like that, where you can
yeah,
just say like tune up this email, make it, make it sound more professional. But we're going to get more of that and it's going to become more stylized. And somebody could make something really interesting with that, the same way that you can use tools to make bad things, you can make tools to make good things. But going all the way back to when people could first start to do desktop publishing, it kind of democratizes doing bad stuff a lot more,
yeah.
or kind of low quality stuff a lot more easily than it does making good stuff. So we've got the avalanche, we've got AI's crappy Photoshop, and we certainly already have AI as like research assistant and writing partner. um, and if you get a chance, listen to the author Stephen Johnson
Yep.
talk on the Verge podcast. Yes, I will plug another podcast about
Yep.
how he's looking at his writing practices assisted by AI. And an amazing nonfiction author. He wrote The Ghost Map. He wrote Where Good Ideas Come From. And he's seeing AI as a research assistant on steroids, and all of the digging and fetching that makes a good book so hard and time consuming gets easier. So you, as the author, get to spend more time drawing connections and finding new avenues for research and finding threads to pull on. So it
Yeah.
doesn't do the synthesis, but it does drag all the raw materials together and make them a lot easier to sift through. And so, like, what we could end up with, the logical extension of that, is that we may all get to do what James Patterson has been doing for years, right in the style of James Patterson. And he solved that problem with humans and money.
Yep.
But you could just as easily solve it for better or worse by using a lot of compute and James Patterson's back catalog. But you can certainly, as a as a nonfiction author or a fiction author, just
hmm
have this assistant that you're as they're going out and they're finding stuff, you will learn everything there is to know about Elizabethan dressmaking techniques, and it's going to pull it all together for you and isolate out the stuff that's interesting, and you can interrogate that and ask questions of it, and then that goes into your book and makes the book better. So that will get for sure. The one that's the long shot, and I think that is the hardest to to predict, is do you get like the AI writing miracle? Do you get AI Sally
Mm,
Rooney? The
right.
AI that actually creates a good thing on its own. And I'm right now giving that like a not I'm giving it a non-zero chance.
Yeah.
I would say like 20%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really hard because large language models are all about training data and priors, which means it's really hard to get something new and interesting. You can get really good approximations of something that you've already seen. And it used to be that the challenge around that was going to be like the kind of the amount of text that it could generate at any one time. But we see that jumping from month to month. Now the big models can crank out like 12,000 words at a time, which means they can hold a plot line or they can hold a character. They can kind of have like persistence of memory
Yeah,
for
that was the problem
yeah,
that Janelle Shane outlined when we talked to her a couple of years back.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Janelle Shane, author of "You Look Like a Thing and I Love You," which highlights a lot of what AI is good at and what it's not good at. And the critical barrier, as she saw it at that time, was we humans see continuity because we humans are pattern identifying machines. So an AI spits out a bunch of text, and we're like, yeah, sure, it could write a novel. Why not? But under the hood, it doesn't remember on the second page what it wrote on the first page. It's just spilling out a pattern, except the page, the amount of page it can kind of hold in its brain at one time has just been getting bigger. So it was years ago, it only, an AI would know roughly like this is a sentence. I did a sentence. Good for me. I did a sentence. Now I'll do another one.
it
I
looks
don't
a
remember what
lot
the
like
last
other
sentence was.
sentences I've seen. I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of sentences, and this looks like one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And then paragraphs, but then pages. And yeah, we're approaching that word count of where a model can see it as a discrete continuous unit where it's going to start writing novellas.
yeah. And you already can say, these are the characters, and here's what the characters want, and here's what the characters do, and based on what it's been trained on, it can kind of hang that into a story, and so there's a school of thought which is, okay, this is the end of everything, and soon
Mhm.
the value of artists, authors and artists will be devalued, and this just kind of cranking stuff out all the time. Um, the I actually see risks in two directions that are not that. I think we already have lots of people writing books that are bad. And we already have to like kind of figure out how to put a book in front of you that's good. We will certainly be having AI that is with various levels of human assistance cranking out books that are better and worse over time. Um, I'm I'm more uh, concerned about, and certainly the thing that we'll be watching for, is to what extent do these models get tied to platforms
Mm.
and want to become a platform themselves? And I think we could do another episode that's just about like the history of walled gardens in ebooks and how they've broken a lot of the innovation in ebooks
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you always end up with somebody kind of fencing their piece of the market to the point that you can't do something interesting and have everybody read it. It's only
yeah,
like the little pool that you've got. And that could happen in AI too. If Gemini starts working on storytelling, but you can only read it on a Google platform, and Amazon does that too, and Meta does that too, then it's kind of like the streaming wars all over again,
yeah,
but with a much smaller audience.
yeah,
And so like that might be something that we talk about next time. But as booksellers, it's an extension of the there's too much to read problem. You know,
yeah.
all of this can be summarized as there will just be too many books to read. But we already know there are too many books to read. There are too many books to read
Yeah,
now.
there's been too many books to read, I think, since you and I were doing this
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
physically putting them on shelves.
Yeah, we could stop publishing now. Every publisher could close, and none of us would get to the end of all the books available to us in our lifetime. So
Yeah,
selection or over selection has never been the issue. The issue is finding like the right thing that delights you and surprises you and shocks you and intrigues you and provokes you, and that job doesn't go away. The trick will be, on one hand, like, can we keep people's attention on long form reading? And that's a
yeah,
whole other challenge.
exactly.
Are the books that are in front of them um, interesting enough that they want to do that? Can we can we keep the perception of the value of books written by a person high enough that we can charge money for them and that we can keep that as a viable profession? Because I don't doubt the ability of people to do things that will surprise us and be interesting to us. And I'm
Yeah.
still kind of on the edge about whether I know an algorithm could write a convincing facsimile of a book that's already been written. I don't know if we can get to the point where they can actually go, whoa, I've never seen that before. That's
Yeah,
something
that
really new.
speaks to me in a relevant and resonant way, and it speaks to thousands, and we're all bonding over the emotional
Yeah.
experience we've
Yeah.
had about this. Yeah, that's something else. But what do you give odds? So you gave your like 20% odds on like can a
On AI
can
Sally Rooney. Yeah.
can a computer do it? What are the odds of so that they do it, but the odds that when it happens, we won't be told up front that it was a robot. There'll be a human face on it, and it will be a grand expose to realize that the voice of a generation was actually just using an LLM.
Well, like what was that book? Naked Came the Stranger, I think it was
Naked Came the
called
Stranger.
back in the
Co-
70s. Like
Collaborative work to produce the worst book
yeah.
possible.
And well, so the backstory on this, for all of you that want to like go deep into publishing lore, was I think it was the 1970s. A group of journalist writers got together and just like couldn't believe that they who were, they're grinding away trying to produce like quality writing every day, and they see the books that are at the top of the bestseller list, and they're like, that book is terrible. Like, yeah, why aren't we writing the trashy bestseller that makes $1 million and that everybody loves? And so they actually
Mm.
got together and kind of collaboratively wrote a book called Naked Came the Stranger, and got it published, and it became a big bestseller. And they found a front person, um, in the form of, someone who I guess kind of in their collective imagination looked like they would be the author of a, kind of a semi-lurid romance novel. And that person went out and did interviews and did media, and only later did they reveal that this was actually like a collective work. So I kind of love that that exists, that you could actually do that. And so for sure, we're either going to, I think this will come in two tracks. We will have people who, you know, kind of very like loudly announce that this book that you've been reading that's at the top of the bestseller list, I made it all with AI, and I did it in like 2 days, and it's kind of like the reveal, and everybody's shocked, and everybody's like, oh my God, yeah, that's going to happen for sure.
So that's 100%. We're putting 100% odds on that.
Someone's
Fair.
going to
Yep.
do that, and
Okay.
we'll never really know like what the process behind the
Yeah.
scenes was that got him to it. But at the same time, and I think much faster and with much less fanfare, we're going to have people that are just kind of like using it as a tool. And it's more like that writing assistant, or it's like your mini James Patterson clone who's, your, you have somebody who finds themselves doing a lot more prompting than they're doing,
Mm.
um, than they're doing writing, but it's like highly iterative. You're doing stuff over and over again. You're kind of mashing stuff together. You're treating it as raw material that you're then crafting into something. And there's nothing to say that with enough time and attention, you couldn't turn that into a perfectly serviceable book. And that I think will happen very quietly,
Mm.
and will probably, is happening now it's happening now at varying levels of quality inside the indie publishing scene and like in self-publishing. Um, but it's not like an editor is going to be able to look at a manuscript that comes in and go, aha, this is
There's
clearly
the AI
been,
bits.
yeah, it's because we know that we're struggling with trying to kind of do detection around that, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
So if the story looks good and the outline looks good and they think they've got a marketing hook for it, chances are one of them's going to make it into a publisher,
Mm.
and the world won't end, but it's certainly going to set some people's hair on fire, and I'm making popcorn, and we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
That book could already be out there. It's fall.
It
The
could
big
be
books are
out there
coming out.
right now.
Could be one of the.
Well, we're probably selling it. It's
We're
probably
probably
somewhere
selling it.
inside the catalog right now.
I hope we sell
Yeah,
lots before the scandal.
yeah, yeah.
What happened at Apple? Apple seems to have let a bunch of people go in their books division. What are they up to?
Yeah, Apple laid off a bunch of people from Apple Books, and this comes a few months after, we saw a whole bunch of Amazon people laid off from the Kindle team. And in Apple's case, it's sad because we want more booksellers in the world, and not fewer. But at the same time, in the case of Apple's news, if we hadn't heard about it, if there hadn't been an announcement, would anyone be able to tell?
Yeah, would you
Um,
would you be able to point to it and go, I see that. Look, they
yeah,
must have scaled back resourcing here.
and this is not to be, salty on Apple, but I can't begin to describe how little on a purely financial basis, Apple ebook sales mean to Apple.
Yeah.
Like they almost certainly make more money selling wired ear pods than they do books. And it's funny because as we say at Kobo, we only have three competitors: largest e-commerce company in the world, biggest search engine in the world, most profitable hardware manufacturer in the world. But there's a reason that when we talk about like competitive analysis and threat analysis and who are we thinking about, we don't think a
Mhm.
lot about Apple. They have this heavily walled garden. They are the only ones who can sell an ebook on an iPhone,
Yep.
really.
Yep.
Inside an app in like
Yeah.
the good way that we all wish that everybody could. That's their fortress.
Yeah. Just I want to
And
just make that clear for anybody listening who's confused, who's like, but I've got a Kindle app and I've got the Kobo app on their phone.
yeah, yeah,
The reason there's no buy button in there, we're not dumb. We know how to put a buy button in something. It's because Apple has rules and we play by the rules because we want our app to be on your iPhone.
yeah.
But one part of those rules are we gotta give up a lot of money to put a buy button in there. So we live with the workaround of you visiting our website, and so do all our competitors.
Yeah. And we wish we didn't have to. And we wish there was a better way. And maybe someday some, aggressive antitrust lawyer will take a run at that. But in the meantime, that's their fortress. But
Yeah.
they're also trapped inside it. I would bet that if you're a person inside Apple Books, you're spending 90% of your time like fending off internal competitors,
Yeah.
fighting budget fights and trying to stay alive. And 10% of your time thinking about, are we actually making something better? Because there's no real competition within the platform.
Yeah.
They've got the buy button. We can't sell on it. Apple can't, Amazon can't sell on it. Google can't sell on it. So there's really no impetus to get better. If you sell 100 million iPhones, a certain number of people are going to stumble into Apple Books, and a certain number of people are going to buy a book on it. Like you just have this river of potential
Yeah.
customers coming through, and regardless of how many staff you've got or how much attention you're paying to it, like people are going to fall into it. So it's both a blessing and a curse. Now, the cool thing would be if that meant that it mutated into some crazy laboratory of reading experiences because they're completely unconstrained from the pressures of the market and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But that doesn't seem to be the way that it's going, which incidentally is totally fine with us. But Apple, if you're listening, like take advantage of that fact that you are nestled deep within the most profitable company in the world and just go crazy.
Go
Like
nuts.
just
Get
go nuts.
crazy.
Do
Yeah.
surprise us with something really
Yeah.
cool. And take that buy button out for a spin. Like just, surprise us, please. We're waiting for you.
Um, we talked a lot about publishers in our last one of these chats.
Yeah.
You're seeing some stuff going on with publisher brands. First of all, the big one, the biggest publisher, they've made a new logo, which doesn't look all that new. Can you tell us about the new logo of Penguin Random House and what does that mean?
I have been, you've got this, these little stories that just like you can't stop looking at and you can't stop paying attention to. And one of the ones that for some reason is just lodged in my brain is Penguin Random House trying to figure out what the penguin should look like. And
This goes back a long
this goes
time.
back a
Yeah.
long way. It's like one of the first kind of publishing marks that had any kind of popular attention to it. Penguin was, it was like the first paperback imprint that democratized, book buying in the UK and spread around the world. And then you have publishers who generally aren't like consumer brands. No one's
Yeah.
going to the HarperCollins bookstore to buy, the latest HarperCollins book because it's a HarperCollins book. They think about authors, but Penguin's always occupied this little niche of, hey, people actually know what this is. And so the number of design convolutions as they've been trying to figure out how to evolve the Penguin are fascinating to me.
Mhm.
If you care about design, if you care about the history of trademarks and logos and everything else, like, do a little bit of Google searching because they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I find that interesting because there are so few publishers that have brands that consumers are aware of.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of There, I would say two big ones. You have Penguin, who also like had this history of designing books in a very consistent way that
Yep.
made it very easy for people to tell that you were like when you were holding on to a Penguin classic, people knew that
I
was a
bet
Penguin classic. Yeah,
everyone listening to this has
yeah.
a Penguin classic in their house because you are interested in books, and there's no way to live a life interested in books without acquiring some Penguin
And
classics,
you don't
and you
have
can
them.
find them. We are
And then,
professional booksellers. You don't
yeah.
need to be. You can find your Penguin classic on the shelf. I guarantee it.
And oh, or you went to university and you had to read
Yep.
Beowulf,
Yep.
or you had to do a Shakespeare play, and there was a version of that for Shakespeare. Like
Yep.
it just ubiquity, and because they were at the forefront of making books affordable,
Yep.
and so that's how they ended up everywhere. The only other company that I would say really has that is Harlequin. And if you're a romance fan, Harlequin is like embedded in your consciousness as the place from which romance comes. They're certainly not the only one, but they're the one that if you ask somebody who makes romance books, everyone,
It's
the
yeah.
person on the street,
It's a
can
Harlequin.
say Harlequin. Yeah. And
Yep.
if you're in the UK, it was Mills and Boon.
Mills and Boon.
Yeah. Um, and so Harlequin got bought by HarperCollins, and HarperCollins, I would say, hasn't been hasn't been leaning into the idea that they have the one publisher that people really know about.
Yeah.
Like I would be making t-shirts all day long. I would just be wrapping myself in that. But of course, they're trying to integrate Harlequin into HarperCollins and make it a part of HarperCollins. And whenever you do that, there's, I'm sure, this internal tussle on how much emphasis do we place on the brand of this thing that we bought
Yeah.
versus our main company. And so we're seeing less, I would say, Harlequin out in the world as a result of that, which I think is sad because
That's a
there,
bummer.
yeah,
The
there are
pride of Don Mills.
exactly, yeah, a Canadian success story, and we don't we don't have a lot of publishers that occupy the public imagination,
Yeah.
and I would love us to have more. And you get like, don't get me wrong, there are niche versions of that all over the place. If if you're a computer programmer of a certain age,
O'Reilly.
you have this deep dedication to O'Reilly and the way that they made their books that is just embedded in you. Um,
Speculative fiction
and
readers right now, Tor
yeah,
is where it's at. You are
yeah,
familiar with the novella because that's a
yeah,
thing they do extremely well.
exactly. And so that all exists, but the like real mass market brands are few and far between. So um, apparently, it looks like Penguin is getting a new Penguin. He looks a little, I don't know, kind of like less robust than he used to look.
He's gone keto. He's on keto.
Yeah, let's call it what it is. It's probably Ozempic. Like it's
It's
probably
Ozempic. It's true. It's
yeah.
Ozempic. Like I didn't want to
Anytime you
call it.
think
Yeah.
that somebody's been working out more, no, it's
No,
almost
it's
always
Ozempic.
Ozempic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's really trapped inside that little circle now. So as if he did something wrong and he's been like imprisoned in a sphere.
Well, to one
So,
side of them is a giant pile of text. It's Penguin Random House. That's not movable type over there.
no, no,
That's a wall.
that's immovable type. That's the edifice that dominates commercial trade publishing. And then you're just a little penguin just trying to make your way in the world.
Fun fact: Alan Lane was a small flightless bird. That's how we got the paperback.
There
That's a
you
true
go.
fact. You heard it here.
Amazing.
Finally, finally, e-readers. We love
Yeah,
e-readers. We
we
make
do.
good e-readers.
I like to think
Gen
so.
Z or Gen Z, as I feel compelled to call them, they've discovered e-readers. What are you seeing that warms the cockles of your chief executive heart?
Okay, it just so this is the moment that I've been waiting for since like 2010. Th- for a little bit of backstory, um, e-readers have kind of traditionally, for something that's like 15 years old, been something that got picked up on average by like a person who was 40 years old or 50 years old. Like
Mhm.
our average e-reader customer looked a lot like an average bookstore customer.
Yeah.
And that's where we get them. We sell our e-readers inside bookstores. Shocker, people inside the bookstores then buy them, and so we kind of inherit that customer demographic. But it's also um, because you've just got all of these inherent accessibility things that make it easier when you're 40 and 50 years old, and
Yep.
maybe it's a little
Every
harder to
book is instantly
read.
large print,
Yeah,
and
maybe
yep,
you
they
need
all
that, and
weigh the
yeah,
same and
yeah.
one hand handling. Yep.
And yet, on the other end of the demographic curve, where lots of people also buy books, there has been very print centric.
Hmm.
So, you looked at the successive waves of like YA publishing, the um, everything from Divergent all the way through to A Court of Thorn and Roses, and that's for those people that were 15, 16, 17, up to 20 years old, all happening in print. And, not that we weren't selling those books too, but we were more often selling them to an older reader who was also interested in reading Hunger
Yep.
Games or something like that. That seems to be changing. And so you go on TikTok right now, and you've got kind of Kobo stands and Kindle stands and Kindle girlies and all of these people who are thrilled and excited about this thing that they never knew before, which is like e-readers.
Yeah.
And and you're and it makes you realize that there was like the first wave of e-reader adoption that happened in like 2010, 2011, 2012. Most of the people who are now jumping onto this bandwagon of wow, e-readers are really interesting and really cool were barely conscious the last
Yep.
for the first wave, and are kind of bumping into this for the first time and going, hey, actually it's really nice to be able to carry all of your books around all the time. And before this sounds like some kind of ad for e-readers or Kobo or anything like that, I just find that really interesting because it's it's sort of like a whole other um it's not just another demographic wave. It's like like a reawakening of a category for a whole different group of customers, and I just find that super fascinating. And what it's led us to is now that we're looking at how are people engaging with this stuff on TikTok and on Instagram and everything else, is like we've then had to go back and make changes to the product. Like we found out that people were decorating their e-reader. They're covered in stickers and bling and diamonds and whatever else,
Yep. You name it. They've
and
been bedazzled.
they're being bedazzled, and what they want is then clear cases to cover the e-readers so that their stickers don't get damaged, and yet people can still see them because this is their way of showing the kind of reader that they are, or what they're interested in. And so we had to go and like make clear cases so that
We
people could
we sure did.
could protect them, um, and and so I'm loving this, and as I'm online talking to kind of different customers or potential customers, the the number that are now people that are like teens 20s is as many as the people who were 40s, 50s, 60s, and that's kind of new, which
Yeah.
I find super interesting. Um, and they're reading I think the same stuff that everybody else is reading, although they have also these really interesting kind of fan communities that are around independent authors, and like those authors are now showing up on TikTok too, and those both the authors themselves are promoting themselves there, and influencers are highlighting authors that didn't come from a traditional publisher. And then the place that you go to get them is through ebooks, and the place that you want
Yeah.
to read an ebook is through an e-reader, and that's awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm loving the how demographics can surprise you, and that's certainly like good for us selling e-readers. Helps that I think we dropped a color e-reader in at just the time that this was happening, and the youth, they like color, so that's helpful for us too.
Great. That's fun. Well, this is great. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. It's always good. Can't wait to do it again.
We will be back real soon with more author interviews, but this has been our second in this book talking series. Hit us up, tell us what you think, wherever you find us. And thanks so much for listening.